I got a brilliant C to show you. It's short and sweet, it's great fun. Taken from the first round of the Fide World Cup. Now, this is a really great tournament. One of, for me, the most enjoyable in the chess calendar. So there's over 200 players playing. It's taking place in Sochi in southern Russia. And, well, some of the strongest players in the world are playing, including the top two, Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. We've got Aronian, Giri, Grishuk, lots of young Indian stars. Well, it's just a great lineup, and of course a knockout event. So there's drama every single round. Anyway, this game, two grandmasters, Mads Andersen from Denmark playing white, and Pablo Salinas Herrera playing black. He's from Chile. Now, starts out as a reti, but quickly transposes into a Slav. You notice that pawn here bolstering the pawn on d5. And white plays a very regular setup. There we go. We're now firmly back into Slav territory. And you can see that black has this very solid pawn chain in the middle of the board. It's hard to refute openings like the Slav. So really reliable. And now the queen's bishop comes out here. At the moment, those two pawns block the bishop, but let me tell you, it has a future. So this is actually a very well-known position. On every turn, both sides will be looking at that pawn break, pawn to e4. Is it good? Now here, white didn't do it. Let's just have a very quick look at what would happen. This is very important, actually. So black can exchange everything, push the queen out of the way, and then break with c5. And that unleashes the queen's bishop. And, well, both bishops look really good. Basically, black is fine there. So instead, white just puts the rooks in the middle of the board, and black does the same. So a kind of waiting game going on here. e4 will still run into the same kind of thing after the exchanges. You know, black will be able to get in c5. So white is just waiting for the moment. Bishop f1, but could be ready to push with e4 now. Black plays c5. So black gets his retaliation in first, and now of course it's too late for white to play e4. Exchange on d5, and now pawn to g3. So that's pretty solid, blocks out the bishop on d6, and the bishop may come to g2, might come all the way out to h3 as well. That's a possibility. Rook c8, good move. So exploits the fact that the queen is on the c file. There is potential for a pin there. And here, white could just, support that knight on c3 with rook c1, but bishop h3 played instead. So it doesn't look bad, looks a nice pin there. Black exchanges on d4, and of course that opens up the c file. Pawn takes is possible here, but knight takes played. So now we have this typical isolated queen pawn position with that knight blockading in the middle. And that knight can't be driven away. And yeah, could be a threat to come here. Maybe knight b5. Bishop b4 played. So there is pressure on that knight on c3. So how does white deal with that? Well, white gets it wrong here. Of course, a move like knight e4 is a very tempting option. And probably the best way to deal with that is pawn to f3, just to shut out the knight. There is a downside to that, of course. It does rather weaken the king's position, but white is solid enough there. But instead, white played knight e2. And now the knight hopped into e4. White is still okay if f2 is protected. This is so often a weakness in these kind of positions. But black is doing fine now. There is, a lot of pressure on c3. But white now played pawn to a3. And this was just a little bit too casual. Of course, if pieces are exchanged on c3, white is very happy. But instead, here we go. Here the fun starts. Knight takes pawn on f2. Well, a very typical idea for these kind of positions with the queen lined up. But here it's a little bit different because the bishop can be taken as well as the knight. So first of all, let's deal with king takes knight. I should say that white took the bishop, but let's have a look at king takes knight. Queen takes pawn check. The king steps aside, and here it is. That bishop slices across the board, and that gives black a winning attack. So that's the problem. So pawn takes bishop played, and now, of course, knight takes bishop. So black isn't even material down, so this is a winning position already. And the attack continues. Queen f2, mate threatened. So queen f5, well, at least that attacks two pieces, but well, white's king is so exposed that some fun things now start in the position. So knight f6 and bishop c1, trying to drive the queen away. Now, if black wants, then simply queen e6 will leave him 2 pawns up actually, because if queen takes, then that knight doesn't get trapped here because of, well, it does get trapped, but basically d4 check, that's important, and then this knight can be taken. So black still has 2 pawn advantage. But after bishop c1, instead of, well, the mundane queen e6, here black came up with an absolutely beautiful move. Knight g4, wonderful stuff. So if bishop takes queen, then we have knight takes bishop, checkmate. That knight does a great job, all those squares are covered. And if queen takes g4, then queen f2 mate, of course. So this is trouble. Rook d3 played. And pawn to d4. And that opens up the long diagonal, so there was no need to move the queen away, because if bishop takes queen or rook takes, then knight h2 is mate. That bishop covers the g2 square. And in the game, white played rook ed1. Do you know what? I really respect this. White did not resign, but went all the way to checkmate. That's the mark of a gentleman. We like that. So here, well, can you spot it? Black to play and checkmate in 2. I do like my mate in 2 puzzles, so I'll give you a little bit of time to try and solve that one. Black to play and mate in 2. Of course, you can always pause the video if you want to. Of course, there are going to be lots of ways to win this position. I mean, simply retreating the queen, but there is no need to retreat. Okay, here we go. Queen g1. That has to be taken, and then knight takes h2 mate, because now the e-file is controlled by the rook. This square is covered by the knight here. This square is covered by the bishop. And the knight delivers checkmate. What a beautiful finish. Now, you could say white was very careless. White certainly shouldn't have allowed that knight takes f2 sacrifice. That was really careless. Nevertheless, I think I really like the spirit in which black played, and this finish here is, I think, very, very beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed that. More coming from the Fide World Cup over the next couple of weeks, actually. So I'll try to keep you up to date with events. Carlsen hasn't started yet. He was seeded directly through into the second round, as were most of the top players. So yeah, more coming soon. Thanks for watching.